And the flag is down. And Clemson, watching the flag carefully, moves out to a couple of feet lead on the very first stroke. And so we're moving into here the early strokes, all three crews rowing high and clean. It's Clemson by a full deck here in the fours, followed by both Syracuse crews. Syracuse in lane 6 in second place, Syracuse in lane 4 trailing back into third. Fours boat race, a good bit longer than an 8, probably 50 seconds to a minute. So early going, not always the best indicator as to how things are going to go down. And Syracuse here in lane 6 has erased the Clemson lead, pulling level and actually pulling ahead of the Tigers. Who is? Syracuse here in lane 6, 34 strokes a minute, stroking quite high for a 4 at this point of the season, but rowing gamely here up a complete deck. Clemson down at 32 strokes a minute as we approach the 500-meter mark. Okay, so correction here. Clemson up at 36 strokes a minute. As we cross the 500, it's Syracuse top 4, about half a boat length up and moving away from the Clemson boat in lane 5. Syracuse in lane 6, another 5 seats back. At about 650 meters in, and it's Clemson almost a full length up on, Syracuse almost a full length up on Clemson in lane 5. Conditions here in the middle of the course a little choppier than we've seen in the earlier race. Definitely some blades slapping the chop here on the recovery. 750 in. Syracuse 1 length up on Clemson. Syracuse B about 2/3 of a length down on that Clemson crew. So Syracuse had pushed out to a good lead, pushed out to a length, just sitting there. I'd say maybe Clemson starting to slowly try and push their way back, and now Syracuse responding. The beauty of being ahead in a boat race is that you can watch your opponent, and Syracuse is able to see what Clemson is trying to do. Clemson now pushing their way back into Syracuse. We're at the 1,000-meter mark. So here's where we're really going to see what these crews are made of. We crossed the line at 340. And it's Syracuse now pushing out. They do have just a touch of open water. Clemson tried to push back into them. We're able to do so a little bit. But now Syracuse has countered that push, regained their 1 length lead, and it is just 1 length, maybe a touch of open water here in the middle of the third 500 of this boat race. All 3 crews have spread themselves out. Syracuse, a seat or 2 seats of open water ahead of Clemson. Clemson, a few seats of open water ahead of Syracuse B. Syracuse rowing a much more manageable 31 and a half right now. And it's Syracuse now, a good 3 seats of open water ahead of Clemson. Clemson equaling that mark back to Syracuse B. Clemson still striking the water at 36 strokes a minute, so still rowing that same rating they were earlier. Syracuse, a much more manageable 31, and in the A boat in particular, getting more out of each stroke as they move to about 4 seats of open water, 500 meters to go. So everybody's relative position remains the same. The margins are growing slightly. It's probably 5 seats of open water for Syracuse. Back to Clemson in lane 5. And Clemson probably about 6 or 7 seats of open water back to Syracuse B. We're into the final 250 meters. And we are going to turn this over to the finish line.